Hey, what's up everybody, Justin here to make a video log about my job here in Japan. And I'm not going to exactly talk about who to apply for and how to apply. That's kind of a different video for a different time, but I know some people are interested in doing what I do, and I'm going to talk about, of course, what I do and the situations you may face if you decide to apply for a job like mine. But before I talk about that, I'm just going to say that I'm only, talking about my own experiences. I'm only speaking for myself. I'm sorry, my throat's drying up. And I don't speak for the schools or the Board of Education I'm contracted with. So I'm going to talk about how I got here partially and what I do here. Alright, I worked as an ALT 3 years ago outside of Tokyo in Tsuchiura in the Ibaraki Prefecture. Did that for a year, and I came back home to Arizona for 3 years, and now I'm back in Japan, this time as an ALT in the Kagawa Prefecture in Shikoku, and I work at 3 high schools. Last time I worked at 2 junior highs, and I worked at 7 elementary schools. So here's exactly what I do. Of course, I'm not exactly a licensed teacher here in Japan, and neither are most ALTs who come here. And to become an ALT or to apply, you gotta have a bachelor's degree, and that's just for visa purposes to work here. And as for speaking Japanese, it's not really required to speak Japanese, though it is looked highly upon that you do. But even if you can, it's more encouraged that you speak to the students in English instead. That way, you're representing that model. You're that model native speaker, and you're that exposure to a native speaker. And if you speak to the students in Japanese, then the students will get the impression like, yes, you'll be impressed that their Japanese is good, but it will make them less encouraged to practice their English with you, and if they want to talk to you, they're just going to speak to you in Japanese instead. And not only that, but if you're just going to speak to the students in Japanese in the middle of an English lesson, it's going to make the Japanese teacher of English look bad in front of the students. And in some situations, it hasn't always been true with me or other people, but if you speak in Japanese to the English teachers in front of the other teachers in the teacher's lounge, it may make them look bad because it may give the impression that their English ability is not that good. So just those things to look out for. But other than that, there's some other situations I want to talk about that some J-vloggers may have had in the past, and what you may face if you decide to become an assistant language teacher here in Japan. And I'm going to talk about situation 1. I've been here, and a lot of people have been here, and this makes up a handful for the ALTs here, and that's being the human tape recorder. The ALT is only utilized for simple-minded tasks like choral reading, model reading, drilling, and so on. The JTE does the real teaching, and the ALT is merely present as an assistant with minimal duties or input. Not only are you just going to be there just to read the textbook and not, to interact with the students, it's likely when you're not teaching classes, you're just going to be at your desk doing absolutely nothing, bored to tears. And, of course, you're going to want to address this with the teachers you work with, but, of course, that's going to be considered confrontational, and the Japanese aren't a confrontational society. And it could cost you your job. And, of course, you want to openly communicate with them, but teachers, they're always busy, of course, lesson planning, and they may be coaching a sport, and they may be planning for that as well. So, just hope for the best that the teacher at one point is going to openly ask suggestions from you. Alright, situation number 2, which is mostly true for me now working in high school here in Kagawa. The JTE takes little or no responsibility for classes taught with the ALT and expects that the ALT will arrive at school with a perfect lesson ready to teach every time. The JTE does not tell the ALT where the students are in the textbook, yet expects that the ALT will coordinate their lesson plans with where they are in the text. This is yes and no true with me. Yes, I do have more control of the classroom, and no, as in the teachers are more openly communicative with me with what the students are learning, where they are in the textbook. I don't exactly have to teach using from the textbook, but I do teach the lesson in relation to it. I just got to think of a proactive activity in which they can practice the objective of the lesson. Take, for example, the recent video I did on how to make arrangements over the telephone. That's pretty much exactly what I do. And other lessons that I'll do, I'll make other videos on that for a future date. So, they're open with me with what I do and whatnot, and usually they work out. And it's not that I don't have full control, but the JTE is there for discipline and to make sure that the students understand what the students are listening to my directions. Yeah, I know I shouldn't, drink water during the middle of the video, but, my throat hurts right now, so sorry. So, yes, the JTE is just there to make sure everybody understands, and, for the most part, I am explaining the directions in English, and, of course, they're not going to understand my English most of the time, so the Japanese teacher will be there to translate for me. Of course, some teachers, ALTs, can do the translations themselves, but, they can't make the JTE look bad, and of course, if you can speak Japanese, the students will have the expectation of saying, like, oh, you should have explained that in Japanese to begin with. Alright, situation number 3, the internationalizer. The JTE, BOE, or school may place a significant emphasis on internationalization, leading the ALT to be more of a cultural, national, or linguistic ambassador than a true language teacher. The ALT may ask, how can I teach 40 kids about, let's say, Halloween? In such cases, the ALT may not feel like they are being fully utilized as a language teacher. Okay, I have not really faced anybody or faced a situation where, this is exactly what they do. But at some points, you are going to be teaching about your country or how this differs from, your home country. So, for the most part, you are, a cultural ambassador of your nation, and for some ALTs, you may be the only foreigner in your community, and there might not be another foreigner for another 100 miles or so. So, at all times, you're a representative of, where you're from, and some people are going to judge foreigners based on, and they might judge you badly because the last foreigner they had exposure to was, a jerk-off or something, or a douchebag. So you got to be very careful with what you do at all times, not just because you're a foreigner, but because you have the title of being a sensei. And I'll explain that another time of what being a sensei means here in Japan, and it's just not limited to being a teacher, but I'll explain that in another video. Alright, the game machine, last situation. Similar to being, the full-time teacher, the ALT may hear the constant request of game from their JTEs. While warm-ups and language games are excellent activities, they lose their face value when they are not coordinated with the main topics of the class or text. And when the ALT asks for more direction as to what topics are to cover, what language elements to use in the game, they're often answered by JTs with anything's okay, which over time may lead the ALT to question his or her usefulness as a language teacher. Okay. Sorry for drinking water again, but I kind of got a rebuttal to this, but but I think there is a reason to why some ALTs may not like this. But anyway, I think games are a good thing. It's to get students excited for English. I just use games for like 10 or 15 minutes, just to get them warm up, just to get them excited, just to get them motivated, just to get them alert. And that's pretty much what I do. You don't have to really dedicate an entire class session to a game if you're really going to teach them something. I say for the most part, you got to keep things excited and proactive. That's just what I try to achieve. As for doing like a whole session to games, that's mostly for the elementary schools and for the kindergartens. But I feel the reason why I can have more control with my lessons is because I'm only at certain schools on a more limited number of bases. Like, I'm only at one school once a week, another school twice a week, another school twice a week. And I teach at 3 schools, and there are some people who can teach at least 25 schools. I know one guy who lives, like, east of me, and he's teaching at, like, 5 junior high schools and 15, 20 elementary schools. And because you're there on that more limited capacity, they want to maximize you more to the fullest opportunity, and you want to make most of that opportunity as well, which is why, you can have these kinds of situations. That's just based on my experiences and my friends' experiences. So, that's the most I can say and speak for myself. But if you got any other suggestions or comments, feel free to leave one or make your own video.